The night was supposed to be calm, but inside the tall glass building that touched the clouds in downtown Chicago, chaos had broken out. James Turner, the youngest CEO in the city to become a millionaire, sat in his wide leather chair staring at the giant screens in front of him. The numbers, the charts, the system he had built his entire empire on all of IT was falling apart. The servers had crashed without warning. The company's entire fortune was hanging by a thread. His heart raced as he shouted at the team of engineers rushing around the office floor. Cables were pulled, keyboards clattered, voices overlapped with panic. James wiped the sweat off his forehead. He had always looked calm in front of cameras, cool in interviews, sharp in boardrooms. But tonight, his face was pale, his hands trembling. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. "What do you mean you can't fix it?" James yelled at the lead technician. The man shrugged helplessly, whispering something about corrupted files, lost backups, and firewalls breached. None of it made sense to James anymore. All he knew was that his dream, his empire, was crumbling in front of his eyes. He slammed his fist on the desk so hard that his glass of water spilled over. The floor went quiet for a moment. Everyone knew that James Turner was not just a boss, he was a storm when he was angry. And tonight, that storm was raging. And then the elevator dinged. Everyone turned their heads. Out of the silver doors stepped a girl. She couldn't have been older than 16. Her braids swung gently as she walked, her backpack strapped tightly to her shoulders. She wasn't dressed like the people in the office, no suit, no tie, no shiny shoes, just a simple hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Her skin glowed under the bright office lights, and her dark brown eyes carried something no one else had in that room: calm. But before I continue, if this story resonates with you, make sure to click subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I'll be back with another story just as unbelievable as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let's begin. "Who is that?" James muttered under his breath, his voice sharp. The girl didn't flinch. She walked straight through the maze of nervous engineers, straight to James's desk. People whispered, shocked at her boldness. Nobody just walked up to the CEO like that. "I heard your system crashed," she said softly, almost too soft for such a loud room. Her voice carried a strange steadiness, like she wasn't afraid at all. James frowned. "And who are you supposed to be?" "My name's Maya," she answered. "And I can fix it." The office erupted with chuckles, scoffs, and rolling eyes. One of the senior engineers shook his head, muttering, "Impossible. We've been trying for hours. She doesn't know what she's talking about." But Maya didn't blink. She just placed her backpack on the desk and unzipped it slowly, pulling out an old laptop covered in stickers. It looked nothing like the polished machines everyone else was using. She flipped it open and said, "Just give me 10 minutes. If I fail, I'll leave quietly. But if I'm right, you'll thank me later." James stared at her. He couldn't believe the nerve of this girl. Yet something inside him, something he couldn't explain, made him nod. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the way her eyes seemed so sure when everything else was falling apart. And so, in the middle of the storm, Maya sat down, connected her laptop to the broken system, and began typing. Her fingers moved like a pianist across the keys, fast but graceful, as though the computer spoke a language only she understood. The room fell into silence, everyone frozen, watching this girl who had appeared out of nowhere take control. James crossed his arms, trying to look confident, but inside his chest his heart pounded. Could this really work? Could a stranger walk in and do what his $1 million team couldn't? Have you ever been in a moment where hope came from the most unexpected place? Share it in the comments, I'd love to know. As the minutes ticked by, a small smile began to form on Maya's lips. James leaned forward, unable to stop himself. For the first time that night, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in hours. Hope. The room was so quiet that you could hear the hum of the servers and the faint tapping of Maya's fingers. James's entire team stood behind her, whispering to one another, doubting her every move. Some laughed under their breath, thinking she was wasting time. Others, though, couldn't look away, almost hypnotized by the speed and confidence in her hands. James didn't realize he had leaned so close until he could see the glow of her laptop screen reflecting in her eyes. She didn't even look nervous. She was focused, breathing steadily, as though she had been waiting for this exact moment her whole life. "What are you even doing?" the head engineer asked, his voice thick with annoyance. "I'm cleaning your mess," Maya replied calmly, not taking her eyes off the screen. The man scoffed and turned away, but James stayed. For some reason, he felt glued to the sight of her. He had built this empire with sharp deals, endless work hours, and the smartest people money could buy. Yet here was a girl, young and ordinary looking, acting like she held the keys to the entire kingdom. Minutes passed. Suddenly, Maya stopped typing. She pressed the enter key and sat back in her chair. The office screens flickered once, twice, and then, like magic, numbers and charts came back to life. The entire system that had been dead only moments ago now roared with activity. The room gasped. "Wait, what? How?" one of the engineers stuttered. James's jaw dropped. For the first time in hours, his company's lifeline was back. He wanted to speak, but the words got stuck in his throat. Maya closed her laptop, slid it back into her backpack, and stood up. It wasn't that hard. You just didn't look in the right place. The head engineer turned red with embarrassment. He tried to argue. "That's impossible. We tried everything." "No," Maya cut him off gently. "You tried what you already knew. I tried what you didn't want to consider." Her words sank like stones into the silence. James finally found his voice. "You saved my company," he whispered. His voice cracked. He hated showing weakness, but tonight, his pride had already been broken. Maya gave a small shrug. "I just fixed a system." But James shook his head. "No, you don't understand. If those servers had stayed down another hour, I would have lost everything: investors, clients, all of it. You didn't just fix a system, you saved lives." For a moment, their eyes met. James felt something he hadn't felt in years: gratitude. Not toward money, not toward power, but toward a person. A stranger who had walked in without fear. The rest of the staff started clapping, hesitantly at first, then louder. But James didn't join in. He was still staring at Maya, trying to understand her. "Why did you come here?" he finally asked. "How did you even know?" Maya glanced down, almost shy now. "Let's just say I've been following your company for a while. I know what it's like to build something and fear losing it. I couldn't just stand by." Her voice carried something heavy, something unsaid. James wanted to ask more, but she slung her backpack over her shoulder and walked toward the elevator. "Wait," James called out. His voice was louder than he expected, almost desperate. "Don't leave. I want to know more about you." Maya paused, looking back at him with those steady brown eyes. For a second, she seemed to consider staying. But then she gave him the faintest smile and said, "Maybe another time." The elevator doors closed, and she was gone. James stood there, surrounded by his staff, but feeling completely alone. Something about that girl unsettled him. Not just because she had saved him, but because she carried an air of mystery, as if she held secrets bigger than his entire empire. That night, when the office emptied and the city lights shimmered outside his window, James sat alone at his desk replaying everything. Who was Maya really? And why did she help him? He didn't know it yet, but that night was only the beginning. Maya wasn't just a girl who fixed a system. She was about to change the course of his life. Have you ever crossed paths with someone who felt like they were sent into your life for a reason? Comment and tell your story. I'd love to read it. Sleep didn't come easy for James that night. He lay in his penthouse apartment staring at the ceiling, the city lights spilling through the tall windows. He had everything money could buy: expensive art, soft rugs, even a piano he never played. Yet all of it felt hollow. His mind kept replaying the moment the elevator doors closed and Maya disappeared. Her face, her calm voice, The way he sat down with absolute certainty when everyone else was panicking. He sat up in bed, ran a hand through his messy hair, and whispered to himself, "Who are you, Maya?" The next morning, his office buzzed with new energy. Clients were reassured. Investors calmed down. The crisis was over. On the surface, everything was fine. But James couldn't stop thinking about the girl who had made it all possible. By noon, he called his assistant, Claire, into his office. She was in her 30s, sharp-eyed, loyal, and used to his unpredictable moods. "Find her," James said. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Find who?" "The girl, Maya. She fixed everything last night." Claire chuckled softly. "James, you had 20 engineers in here yesterday. Which girl are you talking about?" "No," James snapped, then softened his voice. "You'd know if you saw her. She wasn't part of my team. She just showed up." Claire looked skeptical. "And you want me to track her down?" "Yes, whatever it takes." Claire had seen James obsess over business deals, rival CEOs, even scandals. But this was different. His voice carried something else, something like longing. She nodded slowly. "All right, I'll see what I can do." Meanwhile, across the city, Maya walked through the neighborhood she called home. It was nothing like the glass towers downtown. The streets here were cracked, kids played basketball with bent rims, and corner stores with flickering signs stayed open late into the night. Maya lived with her grandmother, Evelyn, a woman in her 70s with wise eyes and a laugh that could warm the coldest heart. Evelyn sat in her rocking chair by the window, knitting a scarf, when Maya walked in. "You're late again," Evelyn teased gently. Maya kissed her cheek. "I stayed out helping someone." Evelyn gave her a long look. "You always say that. One day, you'll have to tell me what you're really doing out there." Maya smiled faintly but said nothing. She pulled off her hoodie, grabbed a notebook from the small wooden table, and started scribbling lines of code. Her grandmother didn't understand computers, but she knew Maya had a gift. Ever since she was a little girl, Maya had been drawn to machines, solving puzzles most adults couldn't. But behind that gift was pain. Her parents had died when she was 14, leaving her and Evelyn alone. Since then, she had used her skills not just for survival, but to make sure people didn't lose everything the way she had. That's why she had shown up at James Turner's office last night. She had seen his system failing from the outside, recognized the signs, and couldn't ignore it. Evelyn watched her quietly. "Maya," she said softly, "you're carrying too much on your shoulders. You help strangers, but who helps you?" Maya froze for a second, her pen hovering over the page. She forced a smile. "I don't need help, Grandma. I'm fine." But deep down, she wasn't fine. She was strong, yes. Brave, yes. But she was also lonely. Back in his glass tower, James stared out his office window, feeling the same emptiness. He had money, fame, and power, but none of it could fill the hollow silence when the day ended. Two people from two different worlds were thinking about each other that night without knowing why. And soon, their paths would cross again this time, not by accident. Have you ever felt like the universe kept pushing you towards someone you couldn't stop thinking about? Tell me in the comments if you have. The next morning, James walked into his office earlier than usual. The city was still waking up, the streets below buzzing with honking cars and rushing footsteps. But, inside his corner office, the air was heavy. Claire stood at his desk with a file in her hand. "I think I found her." James's heart skipped. He tried to look calm, but his voice betrayed him. "Show me." Claire opened the folder. Her name is Maya Carter, 23 years old. Lives on the south side with her grandmother. She has no official connection to any major tech firms, no degree on record, but... Claire leaned closer. "Her online activity is unusual." James frowned. "Unusual how?" "She's been involved in projects that don't appear on paper. Hackathons, underground coding circles, systems repaired quietly without credit. She's a ghost, James. A brilliant ghost." James stared at the file. Her photo was grainy, clearly taken from some ID record. But even in that low-quality picture, her eyes still carried that calm strength. He closed the file. I want to meet her. Claire hesitated. She doesn't live in your world. She's not like the people you're used to. I don't care, James said firmly. Find a way. Meanwhile, Maya sat on the cracked steps outside her apartment building, notebook on her lap. She was scribbling new code, but her mind wasn't fully there. She kept thinking about James Turner. The way he had looked at her when she fixed his system. Not with arrogance, not with suspicion, but with something deeper. Gratitude. She shook her head, closing the notebook. She couldn't let herself think about him. People like him and people like her didn't mix. He lived in a world of glass towers and luxury cars. She lived in a neighborhood where kids went to bed hungry and sirens screamed in the distance at night. Still, a part of her wondered. Why had he stopped her from leaving? Why had his voice sounded almost desperate? Her thoughts were interrupted when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. An unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Maya Carter? The voice was polished, professional. Who's asking? My name is Claire. I work for James Turner. Maya froze. She glanced around instinctively, as if the neighborhood walls were listening. What do you want? Mr. Turner would like to meet with you again. He's very grateful for what you did. I don't need his gratitude, Maya said sharply. I understand, but he insists. Please, just one meeting. He won't waste your time. Maya sighed. She wanted to hang up. But something inside her, maybe curiosity, maybe destiny, made her say, where? Hours later, she walked into a quiet cafe on the edge of the city. It wasn't one of James's fancy rooftop restaurants or sleek office lounges. It was simple, warm, with the smell of fresh coffee filling the air. James was already there, sitting by the window. He wasn't wearing his usual sharp suit. Just a grey sweater and jeans. For the first time, he looked human. When Maya walked in, his face lit up in a way she didn't expect. He stood quickly, almost nervously. You came. Maya slid into the seat across from him, folding her arms. Why did you want to see me? James hesitated. He had practiced a dozen speeches in his head, but none of them fit now. So, he told the truth. Because I can't stop thinking about you. Maya blinked. Excuse me? I don't mean it like that, James said quickly, though his cheeks flushed. I mean, you walked into my office and did the impossible. You weren't scared, you weren't impressed by money or power. You were just you, and I need to know who that is. Maya looked at him for a long moment. She wanted to laugh, to brush him off. But instead she said softly, You think you want to know me. But people like you don't stay when they see the whole picture. James leaned in. Then, show me. There was something in his voice, something raw, without pride. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Maya didn't get up and leave. Instead, she stayed. And that choice would change everything. Have you ever felt pulled towards someone you knew could change your life forever? If so, share it. Below, I want to hear your story. The cafe was quiet except for the low hum of conversation and the soft hiss of the coffee machine. James leaned forward, elbows on the table, watching Maya carefully. She sat across from him, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup, though she hadn't taken a single sip. You don't trust me, James said finally. Maya gave him a faint smirk. Smart observation. Took you this long to figure that out. James chuckled under his breath. He wasn't used to people talking to him like that. Most people either feared him or worshipped him. But Maya, she treated him like he was just another guy sitting in a cafe. He admired that. I just want to know more, James said. What you did the other night, it was extraordinary, but I know there's more to you than that. Maya's eyes grew distant. She stared at the steam rising from her cup, and for a moment James thought she might get up and leave. But instead, she whispered, I lost everything once. That's why I help people like you. James tilted his head. What do you mean? She looked at him then, her dark eyes holding weight he couldn't measure. My parents. They died when I was 14. They had dreams, businesses, plans for the future. The one bad turn, one system failure in the bank they trusted, and everything collapsed. They lost their money, their home, their hope. And then they were gone. Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. She was too used to holding it in. James's chest tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt small in the face of her pain. I swore I wouldn't let that happen to anyone else if I could help it, Maya continued. That's why I do what I do. I watch systems, I fix what I can, even when no one knows it was me, because I know what it feels like to lose everything. Silence stretched between them. James swallowed hard. Maya, I'm sorry, I didn't know. She gave a little shrug. You weren't supposed to know. That's not your world. James shook his head. Maybe it should be. Maybe I've been blind. I built this empire to prove I could, but I never stopped to think about people who couldn't survive the fall if it all crashed. You opened my eyes. And why? Maya studied him carefully. She wanted to believe him, but years of struggle had taught her to be cautious. Words are easy, James. Actions, that's what matters. He nodded slowly. Then let me prove it. Before Maya could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It was a message from her friend Marcus, a young man from the neighborhood who always had her back. Need you. Trouble. Maya's chest tightened. She pushed back her chair quickly. I have to go. James stood too. What's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about. Maya, wait. His voice carried urgency. Let me come with you. She shook her head firmly. No. This isn't your world. And with that, she grabbed her bag and rushed out of the cafe, leaving James staring after her, torn between respecting her walls and breaking through them. Meanwhile, Maya ran through the cracked sidewalks of her neighborhood until she found Marcus waiting near an old convenience store. He was breathing hard, his hoodie pulled tight over his head. What happened? She asked. Marcus glanced around nervously. Some guys, they're trying to drag me into something. I said no, but they don't take no for an answer. Maya's jaw clenched. This wasn't new. The neighborhood had always pulled at people like Marcus, trying to trap them in cycles they couldn't escape. Stay close to me, she said firmly. We'll figure this out. But even as she said it, her mind flickered back to James. To his eyes, his voice, the way he had listened without judgment. She didn't know why, but she felt something shifting inside her, like two parts of her world were about to collide. And she didn't know if she was ready for it. James sat in the cafe long after Maya had left, staring at the empty chair across from him. His coffee had gone cold, but he didn't notice. Something about the way she rushed out, the fear in her eyes, he couldn't shake it. Claire eventually called him, asking about an upcoming meeting with investors. James cut her off. Cancel it. What? James, this is important. I don't care, he said sharply. I need to find Maya. For the first time in his career, business didn't come first. Meanwhile, Maya and Marcus sat on the back steps of the convenience store. The air smelled like fried food and car exhaust. Marcus rubbed his hands nervously. They want me to run errands for them, he muttered. Deliver things I don't want to touch. I told them I'm out, but they don't care. They said if I don't do it, they'll come after me. Maya's stomach turned. She knew who they were, the local crew that ran half the streets in their neighborhood. Once you got tangled with them, it was almost impossible to get free. You're not doing it, Maya said firmly. We'll find another way. Marcus gave her a weak smile. You always say that. But this time I think I'm in over my head. Maya reached for his shoulder. Then I'll pull you out. What she didn't notice was the black car parked at the corner, engine idling, 2 men inside watching. Back downtown, James wasn't in his office. He was in the back seat of his car, instructing his driver to head toward Maya's neighborhood. His assistant Claire had tried to talk him out of it, but he didn't listen. You're the CEO of one of the biggest firms in Chicago. declared, said, "You can't just run into some dangerous part of the city without security." But James only replied, "If she's in trouble, I don't care who I am." The car pulled into streets James had never seen before, rows of old brick buildings, graffiti-covered walls, kids playing ball with shoes full of holes. He pressed his hand against the window, his chest tight. For the first time, he was seeing the world outside of polished boardrooms and luxury suites. And then, he saw her, Maya, standing under the dim glow of a streetlight, speaking to Marcus with that same fierce determination in her eyes. James stepped out of the car. "Maya." She spun around, shocked. "What are you doing here?" He walked up quickly, ignoring the looks from people passing by. "You ran out like something was wrong. I couldn't just sit there," Maya groaned, pulling him aside. "James, you don't belong here. This isn't your fight." "Then make it mine," he said, his voice low but firm. Before Maya could respond, the black car at the corner roared to life. Doors opened. Two men stepped out, tall and broad, their faces shadowed. Marcus cursed under his breath. "That's them." The men walked closer, their eyes scanning James and Maya like prey. One of them smirked. Well, well, what do we have here? Looks like the princess brought a rich friend." James stiffened, his fists clenching, but Maya stepped in front of him. "Leave him out of this. He has nothing to do with it." The man laughed. "Everything has to do with money, and your little friend here looks like walking money." James's blood boiled. He was used to people fearing him in boardrooms, but here his wealth meant nothing. Or worse yet, made him a target. Maya's voice cut through the tension. "If you want someone, take me. Leave Marcus and him alone." James grabbed her arm. "No," he whispered fiercely. "I won't let them." For a moment, time froze. The street was silent except for the rumble of the car engine. And then, something unexpected happened. One of the men recognized James. His smirk disappeared. "Wait, aren't you Turner? The CEO?" James's stomach dropped. The other man's eyes lit up. "Oh, this just got interesting." Maya pulled James back, her heart pounding. She had tried to keep her worlds apart, but now they were colliding. And the danger was only just beginning. The street was tense, every sound sharper than usual. A dog barked in the distance, a bottle clattered on the sidewalk, but no one paid attention. All eyes were on James, Maya, Marcus, and the two men standing just a few feet away. The taller man stepped forward, his grin widening as recognition sank in. "James Turner, the Golden Boy CEO. Man, you're all over the news. Didn't think I'd see you in a place like this." James stood taller, forcing himself not to show fear. "You know who I am. Then you know messing with me isn't smart." The man chuckled darkly. "See, that's where you're wrong. Out here, no one cares about your skyscrapers and boardrooms. Out here, money talks in a different language." Maya's hand tightened on James's sleeve. She whispered quickly, "Don't provoke them. Just stay behind me." James's pride screamed at the idea of hiding behind her, but the raw determination in her eyes made him obey. The second man turned to Marcus, his tone sharp. "You owe us, and now looks like your little friends here are part of the payment." Marcus's face went pale. "I said I'm out. I don't want any part of this anymore." The man sneered. "You don't get to walk away. Nobody walks away." Maya stepped forward, blocking both James and Marcus. Her voice was calm but fierce. "You want something? Take it from me. Leave them." The taller man's eyes narrowed. "You think you can bargain with us?" "I know I can," Maya shot back, "because I'm the one who shut down your little scam last month." Silence. James blinked, confused. Marcus's jaw dropped. The men's smiles vanished. One of them hissed, "That was you?" Maya's chest rose and fell quickly, but she didn't back down. "Yeah, that was me. You were stealing money from families, wiping out savings accounts. I stopped it." James's mind reeled. He hadn't known. She wasn't just some girl with a gift. She was fighting battles no one else even saw. The men's calm cracked. Their eyes burned with anger now. "You're dead," one spat. James instinctively stepped forward, but Maya threw her arm out, holding him back. "No," she said. "If you want me, you'll have to take me. But leave them." The tension was about to snap when headlights suddenly flooded the street. Another car pulled up, black and sleek, doors swinging open. But this time, it wasn't more men from the crew. It was security. James's security. Claire had sent them after tracking his location. "Mr. Turner," one of the guards called, rushing forward. The two men cursed under their breath, backing toward their own car. "This isn't over," the taller one growled at Maya. "You made enemies you can't hide from." Maya stood tall, her face steady even as fear flickered in her eyes. "Then I'll keep fighting." The men peeled away in their car, the tires screeching into the night. James turned to Maya, his chest pounding. "What was that? What do they mean you shut them down?" Maya exhaled, finally letting her guard drop. Her voice was low. "I told you, James, I don't just fix systems, I protect people. Those many, they steal from the ones who have nothing. I couldn't just watch, so I stopped them. But now they know it was me." James's throat tightened. He looked at her and realized she was carrying battles that would break most people, and she was carrying them alone. "You don't have to do this by yourself anymore," James said firmly. Maya shook her head. "This isn't your fight." "It is now," James replied, his voice unshakable. For a long moment, Maya stared at him, searching his face for doubt. But he wasn't backing down. For the first time in years, she felt the weight on her shoulders shift just a little. And in that fragile silence, something unspoken passed between them. Something stronger than fear. The ride back to Maya's neighborhood was quiet. James sat beside her in the back of the car, the city lights sliding across his face. His security detail drove in front and behind, but James hardly noticed them. He was still replaying what had happened, the threats, the way Maya had stood in front of him without fear, the way she admitted she had been secretly fighting these battles all along. Finally, he broke the silence. "You could have been killed tonight." Maya stared out the window. "I've lived with that risk for years. That doesn't make it right." She turned her head, meeting his eyes. "And what would you have done if you were me? Walk away while they destroyed more lives?" James opened his mouth and closed it again. He didn't have an answer. He had built empires, yes, but always with walls around him, lawyers, contracts, security. He had never stood in the middle of a street, staring danger in the face with nothing but courage to protect him. Maya softened just a little. "This is my reality, James. I can't change it, but I can fight it." James leaned forward. His voice was quiet but firm. "Then let me fight with you." She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Finally, she shook her head slightly. "You don't understand what that means." "Then teach me," he said. Her eyes searched his face, and for the first time she saw no arrogance, no pride, just a man who meant every word. By the time the car stopped at her building, the air between them had shifted. James stepped out with her, ignoring the raised eyebrows of his security team. Inside the small apartment, the smell of herbs and old wood filled the air. Evelyn, Maya's grandmother, sat in her rocking chair knitting, her silver hair glowing in the lamplight. She looked up in surprise when James walked in behind Maya. "And who might this be?" Evelyn asked with a knowing smile. Maya sighed, setting her bag down. "Grandma, this is James. He's someone I helped." James stepped forward politely. "It's an honor to meet you, ma'am. You raised someone remarkable." Evelyn's eyes twinkled as she looked between them. "Remarkable, yes. Stubborn, too." Maya rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips. James sat on the worn couch, noticing the faded photos on the walls, pictures of Maya as a child, of a younger Evelyn, of a family that was no longer there. The place was humble, but it carried warmth he hadn't felt in his penthouse for years. Over dinner, simple bowls of soup and bread, James listened more than he spoke. He learned about Maya's late parents, about Evelyn's strength, about the nights Maya stayed up fixing neighbors' computers or quietly stopping scams online. She never charges a dime, Evelyn said proudly. Always giving, even when we don't have much ourselves. James glanced at Maya. She looked embarrassed, staring into her soup. You shouldn't be embarrassed, James said gently. You're doing more for people than most billionaires ever do. Maya's throat tightened. She wasn't used to praise, especially not from someone like him. Later, when Evelyn went to bed, James and Maya sat by the window, the city glowing in the distance. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of the old clock. James spoke softly. You're right, Maya. I don't understand your world, but I want to. Not because I pity you, not because I want to play hero, but because for the first time in a long time, I feel like I've met someone real. Maya's eyes shimmered, though she blinked quickly to hide it. People like you don't stay. They look, they get curious, and then they go back to their towers. James shook his head. I'm not going anywhere. For the first time, Maya let the wall around her heart crack. She didn't smile, but she didn't push him away either. Instead, she looked out the window and whispered, We'll see. And in that quiet moment, under the city lights, something fragile but powerful began to grow. The next morning, James woke up in his penthouse, but something felt different. For years, his mornings had been the same coffee delivered by staff, meetings lined up, calls scheduled, endless emails waiting. But now, none of that mattered. His mind wasn't on investors or profits. It was on Maya, and on the danger she and Marcus were facing. By the time he arrived at his office, Claire was waiting with a stack of files. You missed 3 calls from the board, she said pointedly. They're asking where your focus is. James took the files and set them aside. My focus is exactly where it needs to be. Claire narrowed her eyes. On her? James didn't deny it. Yes. Claire sighed. James, you're walking into a world you don't understand. These people, these gangs, they don't play by the rules you're used to. Then I'll learn their rules, James said calmly, because I won't stand by while Maya fights alone. Claire studied him for a moment, then shook her head. You've changed, and honestly, I think it's for the better. Just don't get yourself killed. Meanwhile, Maya was back in the neighborhood, sitting on the stoop with Marcus. He looked exhausted, his eyes darting nervously every time a car passed. They're going to come back, Marcus muttered. You know they will. Maya nodded. I know, but we'll be ready. We? Marcus frowned. Maya, you can't drag yourself deeper into this for me. You've already got a target on your back. Maya gave him a steady look. Your family. I don't walk away from family. Before Marcus could answer, a sleek car pulled up at the curb. James stepped out, dressed simply, but carrying an aura that still made people turn their heads. Marcus's eyes widened. What's he doing here? Maya sighed, standing up. James hic. He walked toward them, his tone firm. You said I don't belong in your world. Fine, but I'm here anyway, because whether you like it or not, I'm already part of this now. Marcus snorted. Rich boy thinks he can handle the south side? James didn't flinch. I don't know if I can. But I know I won't let Maya stand alone. So you can either keep doubting me or let me help. Marcus glanced at Maya, waiting for her response. She crossed her arms, studying James. You really don't know what you're signing up for. These men don't just threaten, they destroy. James stepped closer. His voice softened, but his eyes stayed steady. Then let them come after me instead. I have more resources, more protection. If they want to fight, they'll have to go through me. Maya blinked, her chest tightening. She had heard promises before empty words from people who left when things got hard. But James's voice carried something different. He wasn't saying it to impress her. He was saying it because he meant it. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Finally, Maya sighed. Fine. If you're really serious, then you need to understand what we're up against. This isn't just about Marcus owing them a favor. It's about a network, people stealing money, preying on the weak. They don't forgive. They don't forgive. Forget. James nodded slowly. Then show me. Teach me what I don't know, and I'll bring what I do know. Together, we can beat them." Marcus muttered under his breath, "This is crazy." But deep down, he felt a flicker of hope he hadn't felt in weeks. That night, the three of them sat around Evelyn's old dining table. Maya sketched out on paper how the crew operated the scams, the fronts, the digital trails. James listened intently, asking questions, taking notes. For the first time, Maya realized he wasn't just a rich man playing hero. He was listening, learning, preparing. At one point, Evelyn shuffled into the room, her eyes tired but curious. She looked at James and smiled knowingly. "I see you're not just another visitor. You're here for the long haul, aren't you?" James smiled back. "Yes, ma'am, I am." And with those words, something shifted. For the first time, Maya let herself imagine the possibility of not fighting alone. But deep down, she also knew the fight ahead would test them in ways neither of them could imagine. The old dining table was covered in scraps of paper, half-empty mugs of coffee, and a laptop that hummed softly under Maya's fingers. James sat across from her, leaning forward, his usually polished hair falling loose as he scribbled notes. Marcus paced in the background, chewing nervously on his hoodie strings. "This isn't just some street gang," Maya explained, tapping her laptop screen. "They've got layers. On the surface, they're small-time hustling callers, leaning on kids like Marcus. But underneath, they're running scams through fake charities, phony businesses, even digital heists. They steal from Bucky, people who can't fight back, and..." James rubbed his jaw, his mind racing. "And no one stopped them?" Maya gave a bitter laugh. "Cops don't care. Politicians look the other way. People around here are too scared to talk. That's how they stay alive." James's pen froze on the page. He thought about all the boardrooms he'd sat in, all the deals he'd signed. Everything in his world was about contracts, rules, reputation. But here rules meant nothing. Power was survival. "So what's the play?" he asked. Maya hesitated. She wasn't used to letting anyone in on her plans. For years it had been her and her laptop, her skills, her courage. But now James was looking at her with steady eyes, ready to follow her lead. "We cut off their money," she said finally. "That's their lifeline. If we can trace their accounts, expose where the cash is coming from, we can choke them before they choke us." Marcus groaned. "Easy for you to say. They'll notice if we even breathe near their accounts. And when they notice, they don't knock politely." James leaned back. "Then we don't just take their money, we make it public. Expose everything. Once the spotlight's on them, they won't be able to hide." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You think exposure will stop them?" James nodded. "It stopped bigger sharks than them. In my world, the one thing worse than losing money is losing reputation. If we hit them on both fronts, they'll have nowhere to run." For the first time, Maya felt a spark of something she rarely allowed herself: hope. She met his eyes and said softly, "That could work." Hours passed as they mapped out the plan. James brought his knowledge of finance and corporations. Maya brought her deep understanding of systems and the streets. Marcus added what he knew about the crew, the names, the places, the routines. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape. At one point, Maya leaned over the table, her braid brushing against the papers, pointing at a line of code on her laptop. James leaned closer, their shoulders brushing. She felt his warmth, his presence, and for a brief second her heart stumbled. She pulled back quickly, clearing her throat. "Don't get too close. This isn't a game." James smiled faintly. "I know. But I also know I trust you more than anyone I've ever worked with." Maya blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. She wanted to push it away, but the truth, Whooshi felt the same. Later that night, after Marcus had crashed on the couch, Maya and James sat by the window again. The city lights blinked in the distance, casting soft shadows across the room. "You could walk away, you know," Maya said quietly. "Go back to your world, your safety, your empire. No one would blame you." James shook his head. "I've walked away from too many things. Not this time. Not from you." Maya's throat tightened. She turned to the window, blinking fast. For years she had carried everything alone, her grief, her battles, her fight to protect others. But now, someone was choosing to stay. And it terrified her almost as much as it comforted her. The following days blurred together in a storm of planning, coding, and late-night strategy sessions. James cancelled meetings without a second thought. For the first time, the stock market numbers on his phone didn't matter. What mattered was the spreadsheet Maya had created, filled with connections between shell companies, offshore accounts, and phony charities. Marcus kept watch, both on the streets and online, warning them whenever word spread that the crew was sniffing around. Evelyn moved quietly through the apartment, watching the three of them with a mix of worry and pride. One evening, as rain poured outside, Maya sat at her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. James stood behind her, leaning on the back of her chair, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Here it is," Maya muttered. "The mother account. Everything flows through here." James leaned closer. "That's millions of dollars." Maya nodded. "Dirty money, all of it." Marcus whistled low. "If you mess with that, they'll come for you with everything they've got." Maya kept typing. "Then let them. We're going to make sure the whole city sees who they really are." James felt his pulse quicken. "So we expose them now?" "Not yet," Maya said. "We need evidence that sticks. Screenshots, transfers, proof that connects the money to their faces. If we release it too soon, they'll bury it." James exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He had fought battles in boardrooms, negotiated deals worth billions, but this was different. This wasn't about profit margins. This was life or death. And then it happened. The lights flickered. The Wi-Fi cut out. The laptop screen went black. Maya froze. No, 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 no. She yanked out cables, restarted systems, but nothing worked. Marcus's voice trembled. "They found us." The sound of tires screeching outside made everyone jump. Headlights cut across the curtains. A car door slammed. Then another. James's chest tightened. "They're here." Maya snapped into motion. "Marcus, get Grandma into the back room, now." Marcus bolted toward Evelyn's room, helping her to her feet. James looked at Maya. "What about us?" Her voice was sharp, but steady. "We don't run, we stall." Before James could argue, the apartment door shook violently under a pounding fist. A voice shouted from outside, deep and menacing. "You thought you could mess with us, Maya? You think we don't know what you're doing?" James felt adrenaline flood his veins. He wasn't built for this kind of fight. But one look at Maya standing tall, eyes fierce, refusing to back down, lit something inside him. He stepped beside her. "If you're standing, I'm standing too." The pounding grew louder. Another voice joined in. "Open this door, or we'll break it down." Maya glanced at James, her heart racing. For years she had faced threats like this alone. But now, she wasn't alone. Still, she knew this was only the beginning. She whispered to him, "No matter what happens, don't let them scare you. That's how they win." James nodded, his jaw tight. Then they went win. And as the door rattled under the force of angry fists, the two of them stood shoulder to shoulder, bracing for the storm. The pounding on the door grew louder, the cheap wooden frame groaning under the assault. Evelyn's frightened voice carried faintly from the back room as Marcus tried to calm her down. James's heart slammed in his chest. In boardrooms, he'd stared down hostile takeovers, lawyers with teeth bared, billion-dollar losses looming. But nothing compared to this, the raw, animal fear of men threatening to break into a home. Maya held up her hand, silently telling him to stay calm. She grabbed a small metal rod from behind the couch, something she'd kept hidden just in case Sanday stood firmly by the door. The men outside shouted again. "Last warning, Maya! You open this door, or we burn this place down." James swallowed hard. What if they're serious? Maya's eyes never left the door. They're always serious. But so am I. The door suddenly cracked, splinters flying as one of the men kicked it hard. The top hinge bent, Another kick, and the wood groaned, ready to give way. James's instincts screamed at him to grab Maya, to run, to do anything but stand frozen. But Maya's voice cut through the chaos. "Listen to me," she said quickly, turning to him. "If they get in, don't fight them head on. Stay close, stay smart, and wait for an opening." Before James could respond, the door burst open with a deafening crack. Two men stormed inside, faces hard, eyes cold, their presence filling the tiny apartment with menace. One carried a bat, the other a knife glinting under the dim light. James instinctively stepped forward, but Maya shifted in front of him like a shield. The man with the bat sneered. "Thought you could mess with us and walk away? Thought you were clever, huh?" Maya's grip on the rod tightened. "I don't scare easy." The man with the knife laughed. "Maybe you should." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The rain hammered the windows. Marcus's muffled voice came from the back, pleading with Evelyn to stay quiet. James's pulse roared in his ears. Then, with terrifying speed, the man with the bat swung. Maya dodged, the blow smashing into the wall with a sickening crack. She countered with a sharp jab of her rod, catching him in the ribs. He cursed, stumbling back. James felt the air rush from his lungs. He had never seen violence up close like this, so fast, so raw. But when the man with the knife lunged at Maya, James's body moved before his mind could think. He grabbed a lamp from the table and smashed it against the attacker's arm. The knife clattered to the floor. James kicked it away, his own voice hoarse with adrenaline. The man turned on him, rage flashing in his eyes. James froze for a split second, realizing what he had done. But Maya didn't. She swung the rod hard, cracking it against the man's shoulder. He staggered back, swearing, clutching his arm. The two attackers exchanged a glance, then cursed under their breath. "This isn't over," one spat. "You just signed your death warrants." They retreated, slamming the broken door as they fled into the stormy night. Silence fell. James's chest heaved, his hands trembling as he dropped the shattered lamp base. He looked at Maya, her braid messy, her chest rising and falling, her eyes still blazing with fire. "Are you okay?" he asked breathlessly. She nodded once, though her hands shook as she lowered the rod. "I've been through worse." James stared at her, realization dawning. She had lived in this kind of danger for years, facing it without backup, without protection. And yet, she still stood tall. James's voice broke. "I've never been this scared in my life." Maya finally looked at him, really looked at him. "Now you see, this is my world." And in that moment, James understood. This wasn't just a fight about money or scams. It was a war for survival, for dignity, for people who had been forgotten. He reached out, his hand brushing hers gently. "Then I'm in this war with you." For the first time, Maya let her shoulders drop, just a little. And for a fleeting moment in the middle of the storm, the unthinkable felt possible that together, they might just stand a chance. The apartment was quiet after the men left, but it was the kind of quiet that felt dangerous, like the air before lightning split the sky. Shards of wood from the broken door lay scattered across the floor. The smashed lamp flickered faintly before dying out, leaving the room in shadow. James sat on the edge of the couch, his hands still trembling. He couldn't shake the image of the knife flashing toward Maya, the way his body had moved without thought, the crash of the lamp against bone. He had never seen that side of himself. He wasn't sure if he wanted to again. Maya stood by the window, staring out at the rain-soaked street. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed the storm inside. She had lived through break-ins, threats, nights where shadows carried knives. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't alone. Marcus came out from the back, his face pale. Evelyn followed slowly, leaning on his arm. Her eyes widened at the wreckage, then settled on Maya and James. "They'll be back," Evelyn said quietly, her voice trembling but steady. "And next time, they won't just knock." Maya turned from the window. "I know." James looked up at her, frustration bubbling in his chest. We can't stay here. This place isn't safe anymore. You, your grandmother, Markusu can't keep living like this. Maya crossed her arms. And where do you suggest we go, James? Your blast tower? You think they won't find us there? James hesitated. He knew she was right. Money could buy security, guards, cameras, but it couldn't erase the fact that the crew had already marked them. Marcus kicked a piece of wood across the floor. This is all my fault, he muttered, voice cracking. I got into their business. I dragged all of us into this mess. Maya's expression softened. She walked over and gripped his shoulders firmly. Marcus, don't. You didn't ask them to prey on kids like you. They chose this. They use fear because it works, but not this time. James watched her, feeling a mix of admiration and something deeper he couldn't yet name. She had every reason to break down, to run, but instead she held her family together with nothing but grit and fire. He stood slowly. Then we fight smarter. They think they can scare us into silence, but if we hit them harder financially, publicly they won't know what hit them. Maya gave him a sharp look. You're talking about war. James nodded. Yes, and I'm not backing down. Evelyn's voice cut in, soft but strong. Then you'd better be ready. Because war takes more than courage, it takes sacrifice. The room fell silent at her words. Maya felt a chill run through her. She had always fought with her mind, her skills, her stubborn will. But now, with James beside her, she felt something dangerous stirring hope. And hope meant she had more to lose. James caught her eye. Whatever it takes, Maya. We're in this together. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. The storm outside eased, but inside the apartment, a new storm was only just beginning. The next morning, the broken door was patched with a piece of plywood Marcus had nailed into place. It didn't look like much, but it was all they had for now. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop balanced on her knees, eyes glued to the code spilling across the screen. James paced behind her, his phone in hand. He had called off his security detail, not wanting extra eyes around. This wasn't a matter he trusted to anyone else. If they were going to win, it had to be tight, quiet, and smart. Marcus hovered by the window, nervously pulling at the blinds. I don't like this. Feels like every car that slows down is them. Maya didn't look up. That's because they want you scared. And it's working. Stop pacing, you're distracting me. James stopped mid-step. What exactly are you doing? Maya's fingers didn't stop moving. Digging into their offshore accounts, they were sloppy with a few transfers, left trails they thought no one would notice. But I noticed. James leaned over her shoulder. Rows of numbers and codes filled the screen, but somehow it all looked like a map lines leading from one hidden bank to another. So this is their real money. Maya nodded. Every dirty dollar. If we can lock these accounts and reroute them, we'll choke them dry. Marcus turned. And when they find out? Because they will. Maya finally looked up. Her eyes were sharp, unflinching. Then we'll be ready. James swallowed, the weight of her words sinking in. Ready. He wasn't sure he'd ever truly be ready for men with bats and knives kicking down doors. But if Maya could stand tall, so could he. By afternoon, Maya had cracked into one of the crew's front businesses, a so-called youth foundation that was nothing more than a money funnel. She showed James the records. Fake donations, false expenses, all leading straight into the main account. James's stomach turned. They're using charity to steal? Of course, Maya said bitterly. That's how they keep people quiet. Who's going to question the guys handing out backpacks at schools? James clenched his fists. For years he had seen corruption in boardrooms, shady deals dressed up as philanthropy, but this was worse. This was betrayal of the vulnerable. Expose it, he said firmly. All of it. Maya hesitated. Not yet. We need more. Once we make our move, there's no turning back. Across the city, in a dimly lit bar, the crew's leader slammed his fist on a sticky table. His name was Leon, a man with a scar running across his cheek and eyes that never softened. They think they can play with my money? He growled, his voice low and dangerous. That little girl and her rich boyfriend? I want them crushed. His men nodded, faces grim. Leon leaned forward, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Bring me the boy too, the brother. He's the weak link. We squeeze him, and she'll fold." The men left to carry out his orders, and Leon lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke with a laugh that rattled the air. Back in the apartment, Maya stretched her arms, exhaustion tugging at her muscles. James handed her a glass of water, his eyes soft. "You need to rest." She shook her head. "No time. They'll hit back soon. I can feel it." James crouched in front of her, his voice steady. "Then we'll face it together. But don't burn yourself out before the real fight starts." Maya looked at him, and for a moment her guard slipped. "Why are you doing this, James? You could walk away, live your perfect life, never think about me again." James held her gaze. "Because the first time I saw you standing in that server room, you reminded me of something I'd forgotten what it means to fight for more than money. I can't let go of that. I won't let go of you." Maya's throat tightened, but before she could respond, Marcus's shout from the window cut through the moment. "They're here." Marcus's voice cracked as he shouted from the window. "They're outside. I saw Leon's car." Maya snapped her laptop shut and jumped to her feet. James rushed over, peering through the blinds. Down on the street, two dark SUVs idled, their engines humming like beasts waiting to pounce. Figures in heavy jackets lingered near the curb, pretending to smoke, but their eyes never left the building. "They're not here for a friendly visit," James muttered. Maya's pulse quickened. She grabbed Marcus by the arm. "Stay close to me. Don't even breathe near that window again." Marcus's face was pale, his lips trembling. "They want me, don't they? That's what this is about." Maya squeezed his arm. "They're not touching you, not while I'm alive." The front door rattled again, weaker this time thanks to Marcus's plywood repair, but the sound made Evelyn flinch in the hallway. She clutched her shawl tighter around her thin shoulders. James's mind raced. He had security guards, private drivers, even ex-military consultants on his payroll, but none of them were here. None of them mattered. It was just the four of them against the storm outside. Maya's phone buzzed suddenly. She glanced at the screen. A message. Just one sentence. "Hand over the boy, or everyone suffers." Her stomach dropped. She held up the phone to James. His jaw tightened, fury sparking in his eyes. "They're trying to break you," he said. Maya nodded slowly. "They think Marcus is my weakness." She turned to her brother, brushing a hand against his cheek. "But they don't know all my strength." Marcus's eyes filled with tears, but before he could speak, glass shattered at the back of the apartment. "Move," Maya yelled. She shoved Marcus toward James, who instinctively grabbed him. Evelyn screamed as two masked men climbed through the broken kitchen window, one wielding a crowbar. Maya swung a chair, blocking the first attacker's advance. The crowbar slammed into the wood with a violent crack, sending splinters flying. James pulled Marcus and Evelyn toward the hallway, his chest pounding. He wanted to run, to shield them all, but he couldn't leave Maya. Not now. The second intruder lunged for Marcus, but James threw himself forward, tackling the man to the ground. They hit the floor hard, fists flying in a blur. James had never fought like this, raw, desperate survival in every punch. Maya ducked another swing from the crowbar and jammed her knee into the attacker's stomach. He staggered back, wheezing, but raised the weapon again. For a split second, Maya felt the weight of it, all the fear, the anger, the years of standing alone. Then she heard James grunt as he wrestled on the floor, saw Marcus clutching Evelyn with wide, terrified eyes, and something inside her snapped into fire. She charged, swinging the chair leg like a bat, striking the man across the jaw. He collapsed with a groan, the crowbar clattering uselessly to the ground. James landed one final punch on his opponent before the man scrambled to his feet and stumbled out the window, dragging the other with him. The apartment was wrecked. Broken glass glittered on the floor like tiny knives. The plywood door rattled in its frame. But for now they had won. Maya's chest heaved as she dropped the chair leg. James staggered to his feet, a cut bleeding on his cheek. Marcus held Evelyn tighter, whispering apologies over and over. "They're not stopping," James said hoarsely. "They won't quit until we're broken." Maya looked at the mess around them, then at her family, then at James. Her voice was low but steady. "Then we don't wait for them anymore. We take the fight to them." The night felt heavy, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional drip of water from the broken window. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with Evelyn, holding her hand, whispering reassurances she could barely hear. James cleaned the blood off his cheek with a damp cloth, his reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror looking like a man he barely recognized. Maya sat on the floor with her laptop, the screen glowing against her tired face. But she wasn't tired anymore. Something sharper had taken root in her, the certainty that they couldn't keep waiting for Leon's men to come crashing through doors and windows. James stepped into the living room, rolling his shoulders as if trying to shake off the fight that still clung to his body. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll come harder. Maya nodded without looking up. "That's why we're hitting them first." James crossed his arms. "What do you have in mind?" Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up bank statements, transaction logs, and offshore wire transfers. Leon's empire runs on money. Drugs, scams, fake charities, all of it funnels into a few key accounts. If we freeze them, reroute them, or better yet, drain them into a place they can't reach, he'll choke. James stepped closer, eyes scanning the screen. "You can actually do that?" Maya glanced up at him, a small smirk tugging at her lips despite the storm raging around them. "James, I already have." She tapped a few keys, and a line of text blinked across the screen. Transfer complete. $1,200,000 moved. Marcus's head shot up from the kitchen. "Wait, what did you just do?" Maya closed the laptop gently. "I took his money, a piece of it at least. Enough to make him bleed." James stared at her, a mix of awe and fear tightening his chest. "Maya, that's not just poking the bear, that's stabbing it." She met his gaze evenly. "Good, let him roar, because the louder he roars, the more attention he brings to himself, and I'll be ready to show the world exactly who he is." Evelyn's voice, quiet but firm, carried from the kitchen. "Child, you've just painted a target on your back bigger than ever before." Maya turned toward her grandmother, her expression softening. "I know, Grandma, but if we don't fight now, when will it ever stop?" For a moment, the only sound was the rain tapping against the broken window. Then James took a slow breath and nodded. "All right, if we're going on the offensive, and we do it smart, I've got contacts, journalists, regulators, people who can make noise once we have the proof. You handle the digital side, I'll handle the stage." Maya tilted her head, studying him. "You'd risk your name for this?" James didn't hesitate. Names can be rebuilt, lives can't. Marcus slammed his fist softly on the table. "So what's next? We just wait for Leon to notice $1 million missing from his stash." Maya's smirk returned, but this time there was steel behind it. "No. We make sure he notices. We make sure he knows who took it." Across town, Leon did notice. He sat in a plush leather chair in the back of a club, a cigar burning between his fingers. His phone buzzed, and when he saw the numbers on the screen, his face twisted in fury. "Who touched my account?" he hissed. One of his men stammered. We don't know yet, but the trail leads back to." "Say it," Leon snapped. "Her, Maya." The cigar snapped between his fingers. He stood slowly, rage rolling off him in waves. "Then it's time we stop playing games." He looked at his men, his scar catching the dim light. "Bring me the girl, alive." The air in Maya's apartment carried a strange stillness that night, like the silence before thunder breaks. She sat on the floor with her laptop again, a dozen tabs open, tracing digital trails that spiderwebbed across the globe. James leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, watching her with quiet intensity. Marcus was restless, pacing like a caged animal. Every time a car door slammed outside, he jumped. Evelyn sat in her rocking chair, knitting slowly, though her eyes rarely left her granddaughter. Maya broke the silence first. Leon won't let this go. We just hit him where it hurts. He'll want payback fast. James pushed off the wall and walked closer. Then we need to stay ahead of him. The more time you spend digging, the closer you are to shutting him down completely. But we can't afford to be blindsided. Maya's fingers paused on the keyboard. Blindsided? James nodded. Leon's not just going to kick down the door again. He's smarter than that. He'll set a trap, something that makes you think you're winning until you realize it's too late. Marcus swallowed hard. Like bait? Yes, James said, his tone grim. Exactly like bait. Almost as if on cue, Maya's inbox pinged with a new message. She frowned, opening it cautiously. The email was clean, no obvious tricks. It claimed to be from a whistleblower inside Leon's organization, someone who wanted out. Attached was a file full of names, bank accounts, drop locations. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, eyes wide. That looks real. James's stomach twisted. It looks too real. Maya narrowed her eyes, scanning the metadata. The file is fresh. No history, no trace. Whoever sent this wanted us to find it. Evelyn set her knitting down, her voice sharp despite her age. Sounds like bait to me. James crouched beside Maya, lowering his voice. If you open that file fully, Leon will know. It's a tracker, a signal, a leash. He wants you to bite so he can pull you in. Maya chewed her lip, staring at the screen. And if it's real? If someone is trying to help? James shook his head. Then they find another way. Leon's too careful to let leaks slip like this. Maya, he's testing you. For the first time in a long time, she hesitated. She had always trusted her instincts, but James's words clung to her like warning bells. Then her phone buzzed again. The text this time. Short. Simple. Midnight. Pier 27. Come alone, or the boy suffers. Marcus's face went pale. The boy? They mean me. Maya gripped his hand firmly. They're bluffing. James's jaw tightened. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, it's a trap. Midnight at a pier? That's a setup if I've ever heard one. Maya closed the laptop slowly, her decision weighing heavy in her chest. Trap or not, I'm going. James stepped in front of her, his voice sharp. No. That's exactly what he wants. Her eyes burned into his. And what's the alternative? Sit here and wait for him to come again? Hide while he keeps his grip on everyone out there? No, James, we end this on our terms. James wanted to argue, to shout, to drag her out of this madness. But he saw it in her face, the same fire he had seen the night she saved his company. The kind that didn't bend, didn't break. He exhaled slowly. Then you're not going alone. The night was cold, the kind of cold that crept under your skin and made every sound feel sharper. The pier stretched out into the dark water, old wood groaning under the weight of time. Faint yellow lights flickered along the path, their glow barely cutting through the fog rolling off the ocean. Maya walked beside James, her hands shoved deep into her jacket pockets. Her laptop bag was slung across her shoulder, though she wasn't sure if the tools inside would save her tonight. James kept close, scanning every shadow, every corner, his jaw clenched tight. Behind them, Marcus and Evelyn stayed behind in the apartment. It had taken everything in James to convince Marcus not to follow, to protect his grandmother instead. But now, as the water lapped against the wooden posts, James wondered if leaving them behind was just as dangerous. Do you hear that? Maya whispered. James nodded. Engines. From the haze, 2 black SUVs appeared, headlights slicing through the fog. They stopped at the edge of the pier, doors opening in unison. Men in dark jackets stepped out, their movements slow, deliberate, like wolves circling prey. And then Leon emerged. He wore a long coat, his scar catching the dim light, his smile as sharp as broken glass. He clapped his hands slowly, the sound echoing across the empty dock. Well, well. The hacker girl and her knight in shining suit, he said. his voice dripping with mockery. "I was wondering how long it would take you to crawl out of your hole." Maya stepped forward, her chin raised. "You want me, Leon?" "Here I am." Leon's smile widened. "Oh, I don't just want you. I want everything. My money, my control, my fear back. You took from me, and now I take from you." He snapped his fingers. Two of his men dragged someone from the back of the SUV. It was a boy no older than 16, thin, terrified, his wrists bound with plastic ties. Marcus wasn't there, but Leon had found another. Maya's stomach twisted. "Who is he?" Leon shrugged casually. "Collateral. One of my runners he thought about quitting. I figured he'd make a fine message." The boy's muffled cries carried through the night air. Maya's heart pounded. She couldn't let Leon use him like this, couldn't let another kid get crushed under his empire. James stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "Let him go. This is between you and us." Leon's eyes flickered with amusement. "You really think you're in control here, Ridge Boy? You've got heart, I'll give you that. But heart doesn't stop bullets." The men around him shifted, hands brushing against their coats where weapons hid. Maya felt the weight of the danger pressing in on all sides. But then, Leon leaned closer, his voice dropping to a hiss that only Maya and James could hear. "The moment you touched my money, you signed your death warrants. Tonight isn't about negotiations. Tonight is about reminders. I own this city." Maya's pulse raced. She glanced at James, who met her eyes with a steady look. No words passed between them, but the message was clear. We fight. Together. Leon straightened, raising his hand. His men tensed, ready to strike. The pier, the fog, the night itself seemed to hold its breath. And then all hell broke loose. The instant Leon dropped his hand, his men moved like shadows exploding into motion. The crack of a gunshot shattered the night, echoing across the water. Maya dove behind a stack of rusted crates, her heart hammering in her chest. James grabbed her arm, pulling her down just as another bullet splintered the wooden railing where she had been standing a second earlier. The bound boy screamed, thrashing in the grip of the two men holding him. His cries were muffled, but desperate enough to cut straight through Maya's bones. "James?" Maya shouted over the chaos, her eyes wide with panic. "I see him," James barked back, ducking low as another round tore through the fog. He spotted the boy and the men holding him near the SUV. It would take a miracle to reach him without getting shot. Leon's laughter rose above the gunfire, cold and sharp. "Run all you want, girl. You can't hide behind your computer now." Maya clenched her fists, anger burning away her fear. She wasn't just some girl hiding behind a screen. She had fought too hard to let Leon win. She reached into her laptop bag, pulling out a small portable drive she had prepared earlier. James glanced at it, confusion flashing across his face. "What are you doing with that?" "Insurance," she whispered fiercely. "If we don't walk out of here, the whole city is going to know who Leon really is." She pressed a sequence of keys on her laptop, triggering a timed upload. Files began transferring silently to a secure cloud server bank records, offshore accounts, every piece of evidence she had collected. James's eyes widened. "You planned this?" Maya didn't answer. She shoved the laptop back into the bag and zipped it tight. There wasn't time for explanations. One of Leon's men crept around the crates, raising his weapon. James lunged forward, tackling him before he could fire. They crashed to the ground, fists flying. Maya grabbed a broken pipe from the pier and swung hard, knocking the man's gun into the water. The boy screamed again, his voice cracking through the fog. Leon raised his arm, aiming his own pistol at the struggling kid. Maya froze. "No!" But before Leon could fire, James hurled the man he had been fighting straight into Leon's path. The shot went wide, the bullet sparking against the metal frame of the SUV. For the first time, Leon's grin slipped. His eyes narrowed, rage simmering. "You're testing me, girl, and I don't lose tests." Maya glared back at him, her voice raw. "Then you've never met someone like me." The pier groaned under the weight of the standoff. Fog swirled around them, gunmen shifting, hearts racing. And then, in the distance, faint sirens began to wail. Leon's eyes flicked toward the sound. His jaw tightened. "You called the cops?" Maya's lips curled into the faintest smirk. "I don't need to call anyone. The truth calls for me." Leon's fury exploded. "Kill them both!" The pier erupted once more, bullets sparking off steel and wood, water splashing violently as stray rounds tore into the waves. Maya and James ducked low, moving together, every step fueled by sheer survival. The sirens grew louder, closer, flashing blue and red against the fog. Leon snarled, signaling his men. "We're not done. Not by a long shot." He shoved one of his men into the driver's seat of the SUV and climbed in after him. Within seconds, the engines roared, tires squealing as the vehicles sped off into the night, disappearing into the mist. Silence fell again, broken only by the labored breathing of Maya, James, and the terrified boy. James collapsed against a crate, his chest heaving. "You set them up." Maya held the laptop bag tightly against her chest, her voice trembling but fierce. "No. I set the truth free." Red and blue lights washed over the pier, the sirens cutting through the night until the engines finally quieted. The smell of salt water mixed with gunpowder still lingered in the air. Officers poured out of their cars, weapons drawn, scanning the fog for threats. Maya stood up slowly, her hands raised to show she wasn't armed. James helped the boy to his feet, gently untying the plastic restraints from his wrists. The kid clung to him, shaking violently, tears streaking down his dirt-stained cheeks. One officer rushed over, his flashlight cutting across their faces. What the hell happened here? James, breathing hard, gestured toward the SUV's tire marks fading into the fog. "Leon Foster. He was here with his men. He tried to kill us." At the mention of Leon's name, the officer's face darkened. Everyone in the city knew his reputation, even if few were willing to say it aloud. But now there were witnesses: Maya, James, and the boy. Maya crouched to the boy's level, her voice soft and steady. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you, but I need your help. What's your name?" The boy sniffled. Derek." His voice cracked like it hadn't been used in days. Maya gave him the faintest smile. "Derek, listen to me. We can stop Leon, but you've been closer to him than any of us. You know things. Can you tell me?" Derek hesitated, eyes darting nervously. He'd been trained to stay quiet, to fear the consequences of betrayal. But then he looked at Maya, the steadiness in her eyes, the unshakable fire that said she wouldn't let Leon win. "They use a warehouse," Derek whispered. "Dockside, near the train yard. That's where the shipments go. Guns, drugs, everything. Leon, he keeps his real servers there too. All his files, all his money." Maya's heart jolted. This was the break they needed, the place Leon would be most vulnerable. James squeezed the boy's shoulder reassuringly. "You did the right thing, Derek. You're not alone anymore." As the officers led them toward safety, Maya pulled James aside, her voice low but urgent. "If Leon's servers are there, that's our chance to bring him down completely. Not just scare him, end him." James studied her, the exhaustion clear in his eyes, but also something else: admiration. "Then we finish this. Together." Meanwhile, across town, Leon slammed his fist into the desk in his office, the wood cracking under the blow. His men stood back, silent, too afraid to breathe. "They were supposed to be dead," Leon snarled, his voice shaking with rage. Instead, the cops showed up? How? No one answered. Leon paced like a caged animal, his mind racing. His accounts had been drained, his grip slipping, his name whispered with weakness instead of fear. For the first time in years, Leon Foster felt something he hadn't known in a long time. Panic. He grabbed his phone and barked into it. "Lock down the warehouse. Nobody in, nobody out. If they're coming for me, they're walking into hell." But deep down, Leon knew the tide was turning. And Maya could feel it too. Back at Evelyn's apartment, she sat with her laptop on her knees, James beside her, Derek curled up on the couch under a blanket. Marcus hovered close, protective, while Evelyn gently stroked the boy's hair like he was her own grandson. Maya's fingers paused over the keyboard. This is it, James. The endgame. James leaned closer, his voice steady. Then let's end it right. The apartment buzzed with quiet tension, as if everyone knew the storm was about to break for good. Maya sat at the table with her laptop open, maps of the docks glowing on the screen. James leaned over her shoulder, pointing at routes and access points, his mind turning the chaos into strategy. Marcus paced back and forth, his nerves obvious. You're talking about walking right into Leon's stronghold. You've seen what he's capable of. He'll have guards, guns, the works. Maya didn't look up. That's why we don't walk in blind. We go in smart. We hit him where he thinks he's strongest, but where he's actually weakest his servers. James nodded, eyes sharp. If we pull his files, drain the rest of his accounts, and expose the warehouse, it'll be too much for him to contain. His empire collapses overnight. Evelyn, sitting in her rocking chair, let out a weary sigh. Child, you've already risked your life more times than I can count. Are you sure this is worth it? Maya finally looked up, meeting her grandmother's gaze. Grandma, if I stop now, Leon wins. He keeps hurting kids like Derek, keeps poisoning this city, keeps buying his way out of justice. I can't let that happen. Not anymore. Evelyn studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then you go with God, Maya. But you go with family too. Don't think for a second you're alone. Derek stirred on the couch, his eyes still swollen from tears. If you're going, I can tell you more. Where the guards stand, where the cameras are. Leon, he always made me wait outside when he went into the server room, but I saw the codes he used. Maya's heart ached for the boy, but she also knew this information was gold. She knelt beside him, her voice gentle. You've already helped more than you know, Derek. When this is over, you'll never have to see that place again. James checked his watch. If we're doing this, it has to be tonight, before Leon shifts everything somewhere else. Maya closed her laptop with finality. Then tonight, it ends. The room fell quiet, each of them lost in their thoughts. Marcus finally broke the silence, his voice shaky but firm. Then, I'm coming with you. Maya shook her head. No, Marcus. Yes, he interrupted, his eyes fierce. I sat on the sidelines long enough. Leon ruined my life too. I'm not letting him take yours without fighting back. Maya saw the determination in his face. For the first time, Marcus wasn't just the kid brother who needed saving, he was ready to stand beside her. James looked at both of them and exhaled slowly. Then we go in together, we take him down, once and for all. Outside, the city lights flickered against the dark horizon. Somewhere across town, Leon's warehouse loomed like a fortress, waiting for them, and for the first time, Maya didn't feel fear. She felt ready. The night air was damp, heavy with the smell of oil and salt from the docks. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking structure of corrugated steel and broken windows, floodlights cutting sharp beams across the cracked pavement. It looked empty at first glance, but Maya knew better. This was Leon's fortress, his vault, his throne. She crouched behind a rusted shipping container with James and Marcus beside her. They were dressed in dark clothes, every step careful, every breath measured. The faint hum of generators filled the silence, along with the occasional shuffle of guards patrolling the perimeter. Marcus peeked around the container, swallowing hard. There's at least 6 men out front, probably more inside. Maya tightened her grip on the strap of her laptop bag. We don't fight them head-on, we go quiet. We get to the server room, that's the heart. James scanned the layout, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Back entrance, less patrols, fewer eyes. If we move now, we can slip past while they're circling to the other side. Maya nodded. Let's do it. They moved low and fast, slipping into the shadows. Marcus's breath came quick and shallow, but his steps held steady. James kept to Maya's side, every glance checking the angles, every sense tuned to danger. When they reached the rear of the warehouse, they found a steel door with a keypad lock. Maya's fingers flew to the keys, her memory flashing back to Derek's trembling voice as he described the code. She punched in the numbers 27 Phi of 9 Un and held her breath. A green light blinked. The lock clicked open. Marcus grinned despite the tension. Kid was right. Inside, the air was colder, filled with the low hum of servers stacked in tall, glowing racks. Wires snaked across the floor like vines, the blinking lights casting eerie reflections on their faces. Maya's chest tightened. This was it, the brain of Leon's empire. She pulled out her laptop, connecting the drive to the nearest terminal. The screen lit up with streams of data, files unfolding before her eyes like a confession. Offshore accounts, wire transfers, names of officials Leon had bought and buried. Everything. This is enough to bury him 10 times over, Maya whispered. James kept watch near the door, his hand resting near the pistol he had taken off one of Leon's men at the pier. He glanced back at her, his voice steady. Then bury him. But before Maya could hit the final sequence, a slow clap echoed through the warehouse. Leon stepped out from the shadows between the server racks, his scar catching the glow of the blinking lights. His men fanned out behind him, weapons raised, faces hard. "Wow, wow," Leon sneered, his voice carrying like a snake's hiss. The little genius and her entourage. "I should thank you, you came right to me." Maya's pulse pounded. She stood slowly, her laptop still running. "This is over, Leon. Your files are already transferring. The world is about to see you for what you are." Leon's smirk sharpened into something colder. "Do you think I built all of this without planning for rats? That's a decoy server you're on. Every file you think you've stolen is a shadow. The real ones? Untouchable." Marcus's face fell. She can't be wrong. Tell me he's bluffing. Maya's mind raced. Could he be right? Or was this another layer of the trap? Her fingers itched to keep typing, to dig deeper, to find the truth hidden under the lies. Leon raised his gun, pointing it directly at Maya. His smile turned cruel. "But don't worry. You won't live long enough to find out." The room held its breath. And then, in one impossible second, everything exploded into motion. The gunshot rang out first, deafening inside the steel belly of the warehouse. Maya threw herself to the floor, sparks flying as the bullet slammed into a server behind her. James lunged forward, tackling Marcus out of the line of fire as Leon's men opened up, the sharp crack of dumbfire bouncing off the metal walls. "Down!" James shouted, dragging Marcus behind a rack of servers. Bullets shattered glass panels and sent cables whipping like snakes. Maya's laptop clattered across the concrete. She scrambled for it, her hands shaking as she pulled it close to her chest. She couldn't let it be destroyed, not now, not when she was this close. Leon's laugh cut through the chaos, smooth and cruel. "You really thought you could beat me? You're a child playing with fire, Maya, and now you're going to burn." Maya's teeth clenched. She wasn't going to let him win. Not here. Not after everything. She yanked a cable from the wall and plugged it directly into her laptop, overriding the decoy system Leon had bragged about. Code filled the screen, layer after layer of firewalls, security traps, and false data. But behind it, just for a second, she glimpsed something real. James caught the flicker of determination in her eyes. "You found something, didn't you?" "His real server," Maya whispered, her fingers flying over the keys. He lied. "It's here. Buried, but here." Marcus peeked around the rack, fear in his voice. "They're moving closer." James pulled the pistol from his belt, firing 2 quick shots that forced Leon's men to scatter. "Then buy us time, Maya. Whatever you're doing, finish it." Maya's chest tightened, her breath shallow. The screen blinked a warning. "Override will trigger system collapse. Proceed?" If she pressed yes, she could expose Leon's empire completely, but the servers would fry, the data destroyed forever after. 1 shot. No second chance. Leon stepped forward, raising his gun again, his men flanking him like shadows. His eyes locked on Maya. "You press that key, and you die before you take your next breath." Her fingers hovered, trembling. The hum of the servers filled her ears, mixing with the pounding of her heart. James's voice cut through the storm. "Maya, look at me." She glanced up. His eyes held hers, steady, unshaken. "You've come too far to stop now. Do it." Maya swallowed hard. She thought of Evelyn's wisdom, Marcus's faith, Derek's tears, the lives broken by Leon's empire. And she slammed her finger down on the key. The servers screamed, lights flashing red as alarms blared. Code surged across Maya's screen, transferring, copying, exposing everything. Offshore accounts, blood money, deals, crimes all flooding into the cloud. Leon roared, his voice breaking with fury. "No!" He fired at her, but James tackled him mid-shot, the bullet grazing the laptop bag instead of Maya. They crashed to the floor, fists flying, rage meeting desperation. Maya clutched the laptop, watching the progress bar climb 70%, 80%, 90%. Marcus grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, swinging wildly at the men closing in. "Get back!" he shouted, his fear drowned out by adrenaline. Leon slammed James into the floor, his scarred face twisted with hatred. He pressed the gun to James's chest. "You die for her mistake." Maya screamed, but before Leon could pull the trigger, Marcus swung the pipe with every ounce of strength he had. The blow cracked across Leon's arm, the gun clattering to the ground. James seized the opening, driving his fist into Leon's jaw, sending him sprawling. The laptop beeped. Upload complete. Maya stared at the words through tears of relief. It was done. Leon's empire was no longer a secret, it was a ticking bomb about to go public. But Leon wasn't finished. He staggered to his feet, eyes blazing with the desperation of a man watching his world collapse. He lunged for Maya, his hands reaching for her throat. And Maya, trembling but unbroken, stood her ground. Leon's hands clamped around Maya's throat with a savage grip, lifting her back against the server rack. The cold steel dug into her spine as her lungs screamed for air. His face was inches from hers, twisted with fury, spittle flying as he roared. "You ruined everything. Do you even understand who I am?" Her vision blurred, spots dancing in her eyes. She clawed at his wrists, her body trembling under the crushing weight of his rage. For a heartbeat, she thought this might be the end after all her fighting, all her sacrifice. She might die here in the dark belly of his empire. But then she saw James staggering back to his feet, blood trickling from his lip, and Marcus gripping the bent pipe, his eyes blazing with a courage he didn't know he had. She thought of Evelyn's steady hands, of Derek's broken voice whispering secrets through tears, of every person Leon had silenced, cheated, and crushed. And something inside her snapped. With a strangled cry, Maya drove her knee upward, slamming it into Leon's ribs. He grunted, loosening his grip just enough. She tore free, gasping for air, and grabbed the nearest weapon she could find, a jagged shard of glass from a shattered server panel. Leon turned back toward her wild-eyed, but Maya didn't flinch. She raised the shard between them, her voice raw and shaking but unbreakable. "You're done, Leon. The world knows. You don't own me. You don't own anyone." James lunged, tackling Leon from behind. They crashed to the ground, the gun skidding across the floor. Marcus kicked it away, his chest heaving. Leon struggled, but James pinned him, his voice sharp with authority. "It's over." For the first time, Leon's eyes betrayed him. Not rage, not power, but fear. The warehouse doors burst open, floodlights flooding the room. Police stormed in, their shouts echoing as they swept the area. Red and blue lights danced against the metal walls. Officers surged forward, weapons drawn, surrounding Leon and his men. Hands on the ground, now. Leon thrashed, spitting curses, but there was nowhere left to run. His empire had crumbled, his secrets scattered, his power stripped bare. Two officers dragged him up in cuffs as he screamed, his voice cracking like a broken man. Maya staggered back against the wall, the shard of glass falling from her trembling hand. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven gasps. James was at her side in an instant, steadying her, his touch grounding her in the storm. "You did it," he whispered. Maya shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "No, we did it. All of us." Marcus dropped the pipe, his hands shaking, his face pale but determined. He looked at his sister, pride shining through the fear. "You were right, Maya. He wasn't untouchable." Evelyn's voice seemed to echo in her memory, steady and strong. "Don't think for a second you're alone." For the first time, Maya believed it. Outside, the night air was cool against her skin as she stepped out of the warehouse. Police cars lined the docks, reporters gathering like moths to flame as word of Leon's arrest spread. Somewhere out there, Derek was safe, no longer a pawn in Leon's twisted game. The fight was over, but the healing that was just beginning. Morning sunlight spilled across the city, washing away the darkness that had swallowed it for so long. News vans crowded the streets, headlines already splashing across every screen. Leon Foster arrested. Crime empire exposed. His face, once untouchable, now looked small and broken in the glow of flashing cameras. Inside Evelyn's apartment, the air was quieter than it had been in months. The scent of fresh toffee drifted from the kitchen. Marcus sat at the table with a bandage on his arm, staring at the newspaper as though he couldn't quite believe it. James leaned against the counter, his shoulders relaxed for the first time since Maya had met him, a faint smile tugging at his tired face. And Miyoshi stood by the window, sunlight warming her cheek. She let herself breathe. Really breathe. The chaos, the danger, the endless fight, it was over. For the first time, she wasn't bracing for the next attack. Evelyn came to her side, her hand resting gently on Maya's shoulder. "You've carried the weight of the world, baby girl. But you don't have to anymore." Maya turned, her throat tightening with emotion. "Roma, I thought I was going to lose everything, but somehow we made it through." Evelyn smiled, her eyes soft with pride. "Because you never gave up. That's what saved you. That's what saved us all." The front door creaked, and Derek stepped inside with a social worker at his side. His eyes were brighter now, though still cautious, still haunted. He carried a small backpack slung over his shoulder. When he saw Maya, his lips trembled. "They said I'm going to a safe place. With a family that'll look after me." Maya crouched down to meet his eyes. "You deserve that, Derek. You deserve peace, and no matter what, you're never alone again." The boy surprised her, then throwing his arms around her neck, clinging with the desperate strength of someone who finally felt safe. Maya held him tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks as James and Marcus looked on. When Derek left with the worker, the room was silent for a long while. Then Marcus broke it, his voice low but filled with something Maya hadn't heard in him for years' hope. "So what now?" James stepped closer, his gaze finding Maya's. "Now? We live. We build something better out of the ruins Leon left behind. You've already proven you can." Maya met his eyes, her chest warming with something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years' possibility. "Together?" "Together," James said, and for the first time, it wasn't just a promise. It was a future. Marcus grinned faintly. "Guess that means no more running." Maya turned back to the window, watching as the city bustled below, alive with a new kind of energy. "No more running," she whispered, and as sunlight bathed the room, it felt like the world had cracked open to let in hope again. Weeks later, the city felt different. Streets that once carried whispers of fear now hummed with life again. People walked taller, lighter, as though the weight Leon had pressed onto them had finally lifted. His empire, once thought untouchable, lay in ruins. The files Maya had unleashed spread everywhere on news outlets, in courtrooms, across kitchen tables where families talked about justice finally being served. Maya sat on a park bench one crisp afternoon, watching children laugh as they chased one another near the fountain. Evelyn sat beside her, knitting slowly, her hands steady and sure. James stood a few feet away with Marcus, showing him how to hold a camera, properly teaching him, guiding him, giving him something new to focus on. For the first time in years, there was no shadow at her back, no sense of someone waiting to strike, just peace. Evelyn glanced up from her yarn. You've done something most people wouldn't dare dream of, Maya. You stood up to a monster and won. Maya let out a small laugh, shaking her head. I was terrified every step of the way. Fear doesn't make you weak, Evelyn said gently. It makes you human. What matters is that you didn't let it stop you. Maya looked toward Marcus. He laughed at something James had said, his shoulders no longer hunched with defeat. For so long he had carried his own pain quietly, thinking it made him broken. Now he looked lighter, as if the fight had given him back pieces of himself he thought were gone forever. Her chest tightened with warmth. They had all been broken in their own ways, but here they were, piecing themselves back together. A group of reporters had asked her earlier in the week if she felt like a hero. She'd shaken her head then, and she still felt the same now. She wasn't a hero. She was just a girl who refused to give up, even when the world told her she couldn't win. James walked over, sliding his hands into his jacket pockets. His eyes held that same steadiness that had carried her through the darkest nights. You know, he said softly, you never gave yourself enough credit. You didn't just take down Leon, you gave people hope again. Maya smiled at him, the heaviness inside her finally loosening into something light. Maybe. But I think they gave me hope too. The fountain bubbled in the background, laughter carried on the breeze. The city felt alive again, and so did she. She took one last breath, long and full, as if filling herself with all the possibility the future now held. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. And in that simple truth, there was victory. Have you ever lived through a storm so dark you thought it would never end, only to find the light waiting on the other side? If you have, share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need the hope you carry.
Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this one, then you'll absolutely love the next. It's even crazier and more captivating than you can imagine. So go ahead and click the video showing right here on your screen, and I'll see you in the next story.